Spells. Spells involve the use of written word using a certain formula, usually with some kind of rhythm, and then usually spoken out while performing some kind of ritual. They intend to cause or influence a particular course of events or to influence a person in some way and can be cast alone or with others. Now, the reason why written word is used is because that's the formula for spell casting. So that is also one of the reasons why the written word, when we spell words, it's called spelling. So spells need some sort of written word to be able to activate the energy of a spell. So white witchcraft says you can cast white spells or black spells. And an example is of a white spell would be someone casting a spell to attract a partner. And a black spell would be casting a spell for someone to get sick. Under my frame of reference in the Akashic Records, a spell only shows up if it's a negative thing and causing some kind of harm in some way. So when it comes to spells, in my frame of reference, a spell is only scans up if it's negatively impacting someone. So if a spell shows up, it's definitely causing harm to the person. It's not a white spell in any way. If someone is using spells to influence a particular course of events or to influence a person in some way using their ego only, then they will draw on darker energy naturally, because without the heart's involvement, the spell is trying to manipulate and override divine intelligence and free will of others for personal gain. For example, if someone wrote down words to call in a partner of their dreams, then use a ritual such as lighting a candle to burn the paper while calling on the divine to help charge this intention, then this would be using the divine to make it happen in the best case scenario for all involved. And in my frame of reference, this would not be a spell. But if someone wrote down words to make a particular person want to be with them, but that person's not interested, and then they use a candle to burn the paper while intensely focusing on that person while they burn it, then because that person is trying to manipulate another person by overriding that person's free will, then only darker energies can be used to charge this intention. If the person was in their heart, they would not be trying to manipulate another person no matter how much they love them, because love is freeing, not controlling. So when it comes to love spells, this is where I find the most kind of common thing that shows up in readings. Sometimes it's quite interesting how many people don't actually think that doing a love spell and focusing on a particular person, they don't actually recognize that as, as a negative thing. Some people, when they're calling in a partner, they will do it the right way, which is, they can write down what they want and all that sort of stuff. They might burn what they've written down in a candle and call on the divine to help bring and manifest this to life, but it's not actually, the person's not focused on a particular person. And that's a beautiful way to manifest. But when you start focusing on a particular person, now it doesn't matter if the person's single or not, if you try and focus your intention in order to will another person into your reality, then that is when it turns into, a negative thing, because you're trying to override someone's free will. Divine energy won't come in and charge someone's intentions to take someone's free will or to manipulate somebody else in order for that person to manifest. The only energy that will come in and help charge that intention when it comes to overriding someone's free will or trying to manipulate somebody, the only energy that will come in and actually, help charge that intention and manifestation is the darker energy, because darker energy loves to be involved in manipulation and overriding people's free will. So that's the energy that will come in and help charge that. It won't be the divine. The darker forces are always willing to step in and help out, especially when called upon in this type of way. Love spells are one of the most common spells I pick up in my work, and it's usually because the person just had no idea that they're using magic to make someone want to be with them is actually using dark energy. This dark energy has no choice but to be the one that charges the intention, because when you're trying to override someone's free will, the divine will not do that. It's only the darker energy that wants to come in and help fuel that intention. Attaching mechanism. Now, as always, like I keep repeating, the attaching mechanism is a weak energy field as well as a non-coherent brain that allows this energy through. So the more uncoherent somebody is, then the more likely they are to be affected from these types of energies. The results in a person. The results will depend on the intention, but some of the intentions can be for illness, loss of love, impotence, and fertility issues, failure, financial issues, and a wide range of others. If we use the love spell example that was cast on a particular person who was not interested, then that person might all of a sudden feel drawn to that person but not know why. Spells that are cast without much emotion will not do much. But if someone was super focused and doing it every night with intense emotions because they were obsessed with this person, then the receiver could start acting out of character to the people around him and could start to feel like something's taking over him. People who I've worked for in this position would say things like, all of a sudden I couldn't stop thinking about her, even though I knew I didn't want to be with her. But something came over me and I ended up in bed with her somehow. Now, unfortunately, I do have to say that the majority of sort of love spells that are negative, most of the time I find that women are casting them. I've never come across a man as far as doing love spells in my readings just yet in the last 10 years. It's always been women behind them. So, you know, I do find that women are more inclined to do the negative type of love spells, focusing on somebody and trying to kind of like, you know, manipulate in that way. So I have had a lot of male clients that have come to me, especially for hands-on healing, who have felt like weird things going on. And, you know, when I've picked up that there's been a love spell cast on them, it's really made sense for the person. Sometimes they'll say things like, yeah, this chick was, you know, like always trying to be around, and I could tell that she was, you know, really trying to get my attention. But they may have had a girlfriend. Some of them have, some of them didn't. But regardless, some of them who've had a girlfriend, they were like not interested and, you know, just not interested. But then they have over the time started to have dreams of them or started to find themselves thinking of them. And then when they've become conscious of thinking of them, they've been like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm not even interested in this girl. Like, why are my thoughts there? And then over, you know, a space of time, they've found that they've actually either ended up very close to kind of falling for them, or sometimes they've actually ended up in bed together. So I've seen all different stories playing out, but usually the person who's had the love spell cast on them, and if the person's doing this nightly, like sometimes people like literally do this love spell every single night before bed, and if they're focused on one person every night, you can imagine that person, it actually does start, it can seep into the person's consciousness. They can start having thoughts and visions about that person, and yet they're aware that they don't want them, but it keeps happening, and that can really trip people out. So the times that I've, you know, had this happen for clients, and I've gone in on a hands-on healing and found this, and I've been able to, like, you know, remove it and then kind of say, wow, you know, like, you've been really focused on. It's made so much sense to the person, and they've been able to go back sometimes for months and kind of tell me all these weird things and random things that have happened. So it's really, really fascinating. The receiver can just feel as though their free will has been taken away because their thoughts or their dreams are based around that person, and they do not want it to be. So they find it really hard to kind of like get control of their own thoughts. And that's when you can really see how somebody who's really focused and really dedicated to doing a love spell like this, focused on one person, and they're doing it every night for a long time, it can really start to take over someone's free will. The more that person is doing it, the more negative energy starts hanging around that person and start trying to, you know, fuel that intention. The receiver can start to really feel it. Now, if someone only does it once, focused on one person, that person's probably not going to feel any effects. It probably won't even touch them. But if someone is more dedicated and more focused on a particular person, then, you know, things can start to be felt, and like I said, free will can start to be distorted. Lifespan. I've never come across a spell from a past life, but I can't say it would never happen. I find that spells are less powerful than other forms of dark arts, and yet I'm sure I haven't seen the spells on the darker side of the spectrum yet, so I'm sure I haven't seen how dark spells can be. Spells can't hide, so you will never have an issue not finding them. So, like I'm going to say that spells are not a past life issue, but like I said, I have not seen, the highest shade of darkness when it comes to spells. The most of the time when I'm finding spells on people, they're not as severe as some of the other darker arts and stuff like that. But I'm sure that in some places and some areas, I'm sure that there can be some spells that might last for lifetimes if they were extremely dark and very, very strong. So I won't say that they're never a past life thing. If you pick up something and you get it's a past life spell, then I would go with it. I would, trust your intuition and trust your information. But for me personally, I haven't found that happen yet.